Welcome to the I Need More Coffee and Better Ideas podcast, where we caffeinate your brain with the freshest takes in news media.
What we try to establish is a cooperation with the techies and the social media companies. We should always repeat that the free press is an integrated part of the democracy, and thus we have a right and obligation to get our journalism through to the audiences.
And welcome to this week's edition of I Need More Coffee and Better Ideas podcast. Today I have with me somewhat of a legend in the Danish media space. I've got the CEO of Berlingske Media, Anders Krabbe Johansen, with me. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you on. Full transparency, Berlingske is a customer of Norcom, so we always want to make sure that that's clear to everyone. But outside of that, we will keep this conversation free-flowing.
And I didn't sign the contract, so you guys are free to do whatever.
True.
So
that is true. Someone else did that, right?
Someone else did that. So
we're in
just
the
go ahead. It's not my responsibility, although everything is my responsibility.
Yeah, on some level, right?
Specifically, yeah.
We always think it's interesting to get a feel of who we're talking to here. So, Anders, if you don't mind, can you give us a bit of a wrap up, or synopsis of your career and how you ended up where you are today?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I'm a grown up now. I'm 57 years old, so I've been in the business for a long time, and I've basically done media all my life, starting with journalism at school, at high school and university. And then my first real job was while I studied, taking a political science degree. I was a radio host in the National Broadcasting Corporations. In Denmark, it's DR. In Norway, it would be NRK. In their youth division for 3 years. And then I got my journalism degree from Columbia in New York, and started working in the business press, Børsen in Denmark, for many years, political editor, correspondent in Brussels. I also participated in launching a TV2 News, the 24-hour news channel in Denmark. I did some work for a newswire, a short stay at the Politiken. And then the reason I changed from being in journalism, in written journalism or audio or video or TV, was when I got offered the job as editor-in-chief for Børsen. It's about 15 years ago. And at that point, they wanted an editor-in-chief and a CEO. And I said yes to the dual role. That was a Bonnier News principle back then, that you would rather have the double whopper, they called it. So that's how I got into business and IT development, as well as the actual journalism. And then 7 years ago, I was hired as CEO and publisher for Berlingske Media, which is 4 Danish brands, so Berlingske, Weekendavisen, BT, and Euroinvestor. And that's where I'm at now. I've written 2 books as well, and I still love writing and debating and stuff. But primarily, I'm a businessman.
Now, you've been through the media industry for quite a few years now.
Mm-hmm.
And one obvious pivot was when you were asked to be the CEO and editor-in-chief in Børsen 14 years ago, which must have been an interesting time to take over a business newspaper with the changes happening in the market around that time.
Yeah.
14, 15 years ago, we're at 2010 approximately.
Yeah.
Right after social media was starting to take off a bit more.
Yeah.
Print was starting to taper off a bit more. And the first iPhone. Yeah. And the iPad was definitely hitting at some point as well around that time, if I'm not mistaken. What were sort of the biggest tasks then that you and the team had to deal with that were sort of top priority at that time?
Well, I would say, fortunately, I'm a amateur tech type. So back when I was in school, I had a ZX81 computer programming, Commodore 64, and I actually liked computers. I was the first one to bring in an Apple computer, an actual, you wouldn't call it PC, but personal computer to Danmarks Radio when I was there. So I like tech part of it, and that that was very helpful when I became the CEO for Børsen. One of the tasks that, I mean, I don't know if I should say took upon myself, but was to push forward in the digital development. And we basically copied the Wall Street Journal slogan, which was anywhere, anytime, any device. I don't know if you remember it. That was a cool slogan. So we changed the whole concept of Børsen into a outlet with journalism for businesses and people interested in economics and so forth, that you could get on any type of device you wanted to access it from. And that was a major change from doing a newspaper plus some digital. So we actually changed the whole setup back then. And I think we were among the first to do so in the Danish market.
And I think that's a great segue into, having your background in tech and that interest, I guess, for technology. The world is about to change again, or has already started to change again with the onset of AI and different ways of working. We have other types of technology that's making, or I shouldn't say making, but is aiding newsrooms to work in a more efficient way. But there are some challenges as well. And now with Berlingske, you own 4 titles, right?
Yes.
And quite a big newsroom, at least for 2 of them, or maybe even 3 of them have a big newsroom.
Yeah. Right.
What are the opportunities that you see when it comes to driving newsroom transformation and ensuring that, one, that the users are receiving the information that they want, and 2, how journalists are able to meet those demands on a daily or weekly or monthly basis?
Actually, it has become much easier now than it was. So the difficulty for the media is the market pressure from other platforms, the other sources of content, social media, Netflix, the whole thing. If you look at Berlingske Media, the advantage for us is that now we do develop and change the entire setup in a scalable manner. So we develop across all 4 brands. When we do develop anything, whether it's a CMS or new audio setup or different workflows or data points on journalism, the whole thing, we do it across all 4 brands. Maybe not simultaneously. Maybe we have one media going ahead or being like the first mover, and then the other one's catching up, depending on their interest and their needs. But that's a major advantage. So we have much better tools now than we had a couple of years ago, and definitely 10, 20 years ago. And the tools that we have now are improving rapidly with AI support and plugins and the like. So that whole thing, I think, is getting easier and easier. The other thing is that the data we have now on the usage of our journalism, what works, what doesn't work, how do people use it, when do they want it, what type of journalism do they want, what's the behavior and so forth, is very granular now compared to a couple of years ago. And so I think we are, from a workflow point of view, much better off now than we used to be, and the journalists have much better tools. That said, not everything is easy, but that's actually much more because of the market pressure than because of internal stuff.
Yeah, for sure. We see the same, across most of our customers as well. One thing that I picked up, and I'm not sure if this was specific for the Danish market, and please correct me here if I'm wrong, but on the market pressure that you mentioned, right, from social media, there's also market pressure from search. And if I'm not mistaken, Google just blocked 1% of the traffic in Denmark. Is this correct? And can you elaborate a bit on that? Because I've seen both, people from your organization and from DR and from other Danish publishers publishing quite a bit on that and talking a bit on it. Can you give sort of your flavor of that?
Yes. I mean, as a media company, we of course acknowledge that Google is there. So it's not. We're not going to fight tech as it's going to go away. But what we try to establish is a cooperation with the techies and the social media companies, so that they behave in a manner so that we can predict what happens in the market, that we can fulfill the role that we have to give people information. And I mean, we should always repeat that the free press is an integrated part of the democracy, and thus we have a right and obligation to get our journalism through to the audiences. So when the tech companies like Google has done with this initiative, change the setup for us without telling us in advance, and without us being able to change our behavior or act accordingly, it's really harmful. It's harmful for our journalism, but it's also harmful for the relation that we try to build with the tech giants. And we actually do try to build a constructive dialogue with Google, and we do have sometimes and most of the time, and with Microsoft, Facebook, X, TikTok, more difficult, but at least with Google and Microsoft, we are actually used to having a pretty good dialogue. So we were quite surprised that they took this initiative without any notice.
Yeah, I was quite surprised as well, and I think with media struggling enough as it is, taking advantage of market position like that seems, a bit unfair to say the least.
Yeah.
But if we flip that around and we say, okay, technology is here, the technology giants are here, what are the opportunities as you see it? Like, what are your thoughts on the newsroom driving engagement in a world where, if we pull this maybe a bit into live news as well, where speed is really important and has been become more and more important perhaps than ever. What are the opportunities in there, and where do you find that newsrooms like yours can drive the engagement that you need to have to be a sustainable news provider?
First of all, I think it is fantastic that you can get access to as many people as we do easily, and at a very, very, or actually I should say extremely low cost. So we should never underestimate that the digital revolution has changed the whole setup so that we can produce journalism and get it out there really quickly and very cheaply, compared to newspapers or traditional TV, which was still is very expensive to distribute. Berlingske Media, all in all, have access to 2.1 million Danes a month, and we are little less than 6 million people, and some kids and new stuff, and in the population as well. So it's quite a lot of people.
Yeah.
That wouldn't have happened 10, 20 years ago. So that's quite amazing. So the access is key. Then the other positive part is that we have, due to our legacy, a lot of trust in, or the public has a lot of trust in us. We should always be aware that people could mistrust us as well and be critical of us. We should enter into that dialogue. But generally, the trust in traditional media is high, depending on the brand and the history of each news brand, which is extremely important. And that gives us a head start in a lot of discussions, and it gives us access to people, and they want to interact with us. They want to listen to us, and they take us seriously. They form their opinion based on us. And I don't mind that we have new competitors, whether it's podcasts or bloggers or people on Facebook or X or wherever they want to speak their mind. So I think those two factors are the positive ones. Then the negative ones are the ones where the tech giants, or actually the governments, they bully the private media, and I think that's a major issue. So if the tech companies do what we saw Google just did, and that's a small thing, but still a thing, with blocking part of our content without noticing in advance, or if you have Facebook or TikTok and others that do not want to recognize our rights as publishers for the content, those issues are really, really big issues. The same with if you get monopoly or quasi monopoly on the sale of advertising, digital advertising in the whole Google ecosystem. Those issues are major issues where we should have a discussion on whether the competition authorities should have a way to handle this in a speedy manner so that we get equal access, or at least fair access to the market.
Yep. You mentioned your size and reach. And speaking of a publisher who has also size and reach, but perhaps in a different way, is your new owner, Amedia.
Yes.
Which is more of a local news provider than a general, national publisher, although they do own at least one national brand. What are the opportunities that you see, and can you perhaps elaborate a little bit on that new ownership structure? Because going from DPG to Amedia is quite a shift. So, of course, since the news broke, I've been dying to ask you this question. What your thoughts are and where you find the opportunities going forward.
I mean, first of all, Berlingske Media has been extremely lucky with the past owner and the new owner. So I've worked for DPG Media now for 7 years, and it's a great Belgian media company with success. They are optimistic. They take their position seriously, and they grow, which is amazing. So that was a great owner for Berlingske Media. Same goes for our media. Now, we've worked together for only a month now, approximately a month. They took over on the 4th of December. And it seems like a great company. They have done not the same, but they've had the same basic thinking in how they have developed our media over the past years as we've had in Berlingske Media. So each brand is extremely strong, has its own identity, but the whole setup in sales, IT, tech, login, the whole thing is scaled across all brands, and thus you get a lot of positive effects from that consolidation. So they have the same thinking in how to organize a modern media company. And I think if you ask them, I think that's one of the things they found attractive with Berlingske Media, is that we're more or less organized in the same manner. Although, as you say, our brands are very different. I think Netavisen is more or less the same as BT, whereas we have national brands with the Weekendavisen and Berlingske, and our media is more regional, local news outlets and other stuff as well. I am really positive about the new owner. I think, as I said, we have a great cooperation already. And my sense is in this company as well that among managers, editors, and staff, there's a positive feeling.
Yeah, and we have Amedia as a customer from before as well. Been happily working with them for quite a few years now, and it'll be interesting to see how a potential sort of collaboration on the work we do with you across both organizations perhaps can be leveraged as well, even though local news is different from tabloid and national news, but still at the same time there might be some stuff that we can collaborate on, and we're definitely cheering from the sidelines here and hoping that everything is going to be just dandy. Well, Anders, thank you so much for joining the podcast. Really appreciate your time. We have one final question, and that is how many cups of coffee you have per day?
On average, well, I said you always underreport, isn't that? I think if I don't misbehave, I have 3-4 cups. If I don't think about it, I have 10.
Oh wow!
So so I have a journalist issue with coffee, but I am getting more reluctant to drink coffee all the time. But I have a tendency to drink coffee like as if it was water. But my favorite cup is the first cup. I have a cafe around the corner called Kaffbar. It's a local one. It's only one, same lady every morning, and I get a cortado every morning going to work. So that's my favorite cup.
I share that. The first cup is always the best one. All right, Anders, thank you so much for coming on, and look forward to seeing you sometime in the future, and good luck with everything moving forward.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.